Hello.
Hello.
Okay, hello. Welcome to my channel. My name is Jody, and you've quite really just stumbled upon my monthly recap where I talk about the books I read this month. This month is a little different because I chose to focus on a specific genre of books, which is romance. But yes, my mom likes to borrow my books, and when I told her I was just reading romance books this month, she was like, "Is your romance life not good enough that you have to read romance books?" First of all, when did my mom learn to roast me like that? And no, that is not the case, okay? The reason why I decided to choose romance books this month is because romance books are like my guilty pleasure. They make me feel good, they're funny, and after a couple of really emotional books the past few months and the seasonal depression of the summer, I wanted to read some fun books, and that's why I chose to just focus on romance books this month. Specifically the rom-com genre. I know there's some emotional romance books, but I specifically chose contemporary romance and ones that lean more towards the like romantic comedy humor side of romance. I grabbed these based off of what I saw was popular on Goodreads and Bookstagram and BookTube, so these are somewhat popular romance books already. I haven't read much romance books outside of contemporary romance, which a lot of what these books are, so if you have any recommendations for historical romance, etc., let me know in the comments below because I'm always looking for a good romance book, you know? I won't give any spoilers on the books I plan to talk about in this video, but I will mention the level of spice and also the tropes that the book has. Then I will rank them at the end. So with that, I will jump into it. The first romance book I read this month was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, and I borrowed this one from the library, so I don't have it physically right now, but I kind of want to purchase it because it was really, really good. Like, okay, Sally Thorne, I see you, girl. Where were you? Where were you in my life? I heard this was her debut novel, so the first novel she wrote, and it was amazing. Like, wow. I think I started off this month with a really strong romance book because the next ones felt a little disappointing, so yeah. But yeah, this book had me like, whew, the steam, is it getting hot in here? It was everything I wanted in terms of a romance. I would say the tropes this book had was, it was classic rivals to lovers / enemies to lovers, whichever you want to call it. And I believe there's also forced proximity, and it was also an office romance. So winky face if you like those tropes. There's also a very minor love triangle, very minor. In terms of the spice, I would say it was like open door. You kind of knew what was happening, but not too explicit, not that descriptive in terms of the inappropriate scenes, because my mom watches my videos. So The Hating Game is about two characters, Lucy Hutton and Josh Templeton. These are the main love interests, and they are forced to work together after their respective companies, their respective publishing companies have merged. They are literal opposites. Lucy is like this quirky, bright character, and Josh is this uptight, meticulous, clean-cut character, and they hate each other, but they are forced to work across each other because they're actually the assistants to the co-CEOs of the two publishing companies. And then a promotional opportunity comes up where only one of them can get promoted, and then the battle is on. It's like a battle of seeing who can get the spot, but then tension is high. This book was entertaining. I don't read romance books for the realism or the realistic nature of the romance. I read them to have a good time. And let me tell you, I had a good time reading this book. The tension, the angst, it was all there. It was all there. And the romance was really sweet as well. Like, I wasn't expecting there to also be a sweeter side to this tense steamy, angsty romance. So that was a nice touch on the story as well. But I really liked the just build up of their relationship in the beginning, and I got, you know, the butterflies in my stomach. Although it was quite silly how they like hated each other in the beginning, I thought the story was really fun and I had a great time reading it. I love the book. It was hilarious and exciting. So if you're looking for a good like rivals to lovers office romance, I definitely recommend this one. The second book I read this month was Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey, and this is the sequel of It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I would recommend reading that one first if you plan on reading this one, because it does provide a lot of context and backstory that I think you would appreciate if you were to read this one. That one I lent to Tiffany because I feel like she would really enjoy the angst and the romantic tension in that one. The first one's more rivals to lovers, if we're talking about tropes. This one's more friendship to lovers. I would say kind of just as spicy as It Happened One Summer, if you're familiar with the spice level there. This one is more explicit than The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This one, the scenes are a little bit more explicitly described, a little steamier. So Hook, Line, and Sinker follows the love story of Hannah Bellinger and Fox Thornton. Hannah is the sister of Piper Bellinger, who was the main protagonist in the first book, It Happened One Summer. So this is focused on Hannah's story. And Fox, who is another king crab fisherman in Westport, the town of which this story takes place. In this novel, Hannah's working as a film assistant and suggests to use Westport as the setting of this film. Also, she has a huge crush on the director of this film. I think his name is like Sergey. Wow, I'm just gonna put the name up here and learn how to pronounce it later, because I think it's like Italian or Russian. Don't quote me on this. While she's at Westport, she decides to crash in the spare bedroom of Fox. Also, she decides to get his help on vying for the attention of the director that she has a crush on, because Fox is the notorious like bad boy, sexy, and good at getting girls. You can obviously assume where that goes. Instead of Hannah liking the director more, she ends up liking Fox more, and vice versa. But they have this weird friendship thing going on, and they're not sure if they can cross that line. And so, yes, that's sort of the premise of this book. I thought it was okay, actually. I didn't like it as much as the first book. I really liked Hannah's character in the first book, so I wanted to see how her love story would be developed and told. Towards the midway point, or a little bit past the midway point, it started just getting repetitive, specifically Fox's insecurities and Hannah's back and forth indecisiveness. But the ending was really sweet, so I don't know, I felt this book was like a roller coaster for me. There's parts of it I really liked and parts of it where I was losing interest. So yeah, it was overall an okay book, if that tells you anything. Very okay, very mediocre in terms of a romance. So yes, take that as you will. The third book I read this month was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is actually my third Ali Hazelwood book. I read The Love Hypothesis and Check and Mate earlier this year, and I thought those two were okay, but I heard really good things about this book, so I wanted to give it a try. This was by far my favorite Ali Hazelwood book. I enjoyed the story. I thought the characters were well developed, and I really liked the chemistry and just the interactions, the amount of interactions between the two characters, because I feel like that was an element that was missing in the previous two books that I've read from her. The tropes in this one is, I believe, rivals to lovers / enemies to lovers. She doesn't like him. Yeah, enemies to lovers. And the spice level is that it's pretty spicy, probably along the same lines, if not a little bit more, than The Love Hypothesis if you've read that one. Maybe a little less detailed than Tessa Bailey's books, but just as steamy. Love theoretically follows the story of Elsie Hanaway, a theoretical physicist who is an adjunct professor during the day, but because that doesn't pay the bills and she doesn't make enough money as a professor, she has a little side hustle where she offers her services as a fake girlfriend, non-sexual by the way. She is a ultimate people pleaser, so she's really good at changing her personality to meet her clients' needs. A new position for her dream job opens at MIT, and when she interviews for it, she finds out that one of her clients then a new opportunity / position opens up at MIT. It's her dream job where she can focus on research rather than be a professor, and it also probably pays more. And while she's interviewing for this new position, she finds out that one of her clients' older brother, the male protagonist of the story, Jack Smith, is on the hiring committee for her interview. And he is also, quote unquote, the cold-hearted experimental physicist who ruined her mentor's career and undermined the reputation of theorists everywhere. If you love The Love Hypothesis, you would probably like Love Theoretically. It has very much the same template. There is a female protagonist who is a woman in STEM. There is this big, hunky male protagonist love interest. In my opinion, I loved Love Theoretically way more than The Love Hypothesis. I thought it was so much better. I thought the characters had more depth, and I also found Elsie's character much more relatable. As a people pleaser myself, I just felt painfully aware with her struggles, and I was really cheering for her when she was starting to put herself first in the novel. This book was a lot of fun. I think that's what you can expect from an Ali Hazelwood book. They're just really entertaining. I love the corny physics jokes, even though they went over my head. This is another good rom-com if you like rivals to lovers / enemies to lovers and you want quirky rom-com vibes. The last book I read this month was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. You might recognize this one because if you've been to a bookstore or on social media like Bookstagram, BookTube, you've probably seen her most recent book being promoted everywhere, which I think is called Just for the Summer. It's part of this series, but it's the third book. Although I don't think you have to read them in order, I am OCD like that and wanted to start with the first book. And also, my friend Tushali recommended Yours Truly, which is the second book of the series. I wanted to read the first one first and then go through the second and third one. So hence, I started with this one. This one had the tropes of opposites attract, and there was a slight age gap, nothing crazy. In terms of spice, I would say this was along the same lines as The Hating Game. It was like an open door romance. It wasn't that explicit. Part of Your World starts out with our female protagonist, Alexis Montgomery. She is a city gal and ER doctor. She swerves in the middle of the road to avoid a raccoon on her way back from a family event, and she ends up in a ditch, and this is where the male protagonist comes in. His name is Daniel Grant. He tows her out of this ditch, and then they part ways. Coincidentally, end up at the same bar in this local town of Waukon, Minnesota, and Daniel's friends are also there and have this bet to see who can pick up Alexis at the bar. So Daniel comes up to her and they discuss the bet, and Alexis decides to help him win by going home with Daniel. From there, that's where the two start their romance. If you like romances where a city gal meets small local country boy, this one's right up your alley. That's exactly what this was. This story was really heartwarming and cute while also tackling some complex issues. While the other romance books I read this month were more on the lighter rom-com side, this one was a rom-com but also delved into pretty serious themes like physical, emotional, and mental domestic abuse. So trigger warnings for those topics. And also just the fact that they are from two different worlds, the conflict between the two characters felt a little bit more realistic. Depending on the vibe you're going for, this may or may not be for you, because I've read some reviews saying that it took away from their experience. But if you do want something with more serious undertones, this would probably be the rom-com for you. I really enjoyed it, and I'm interested to pick up her second two books in this series, which is Yours Truly and the summer one. So that concludes my monthly recap of all the books I read in July. I also read this advanced reader copy called The Girl Most Likely To by Jennifer Liu, provided by NetGalley, but I wasn't sure what the morals are for reviewing ARCs on YouTube. I know you can provide the feedback on NetGalley and Goodreads, but I wasn't sure if I'm allowed to talk on YouTube. So I omitted that book for this month's review. But thanks so much for joining once again. It means so much to me that you guys are listening to my silly thoughts and rambles on the books I've read or I'm reading. So it means a lot, and I do like to sprinkle in romance books when I read other serious books during the month. So if you have any romance book recommendations for me, let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, like and subscribe. Thanks, bye!